So, I know I said that I was going to be not doing many of these in the last couple weeks of the bar exam prep. Yesterday I got back the results of the simulated MBE that I took for Barbary at the end of last weekend, I should say. I did not do well. And I mean, I had graded it myself, and I know, but it came back with the percentile rankings, and I did not do well. I did particularly well in constitutional law and evidence, but what bothers me about evidence in particular is the fact that my other testing with evidence has been all over the map, up and down and up and down and up and down. So there's been no consistency, and if you were to average all those things together, it still does not reach into the passing range. Con law, I'm not as worried about because con law was always my favorite subject and always the easiest for me to understand. And I'm trying to sort of extrapolate what works for me on con law and see if I can apply it to any of the other subjects. I really feel like I need at least 2 more weeks to get this completed and to feel ready. And I know that on the bar exam you never really truly feel ready, and I need to keep reminding myself of that and keep keeping that perspective. But I'm getting to the point where I'm very, very discouraged, and I know that the discouragement, the negative thinking, none of that's really going to help me. It certainly doesn't help motivate me, and I have too much of the realist in the back of my head saying that, you know, based off of what you're doing right now, based off of the fact that, you know, in order for you to do a good, complete PT, you had to use 30 minutes that you could have used on the other PT. Thus not really completing either of them very well. And there's a lot of value judgments. How much I'm behind, how much I'm not practicing enough. And again, one of the perspectives I do try to keep in mind is I am practicing way more than I did before, and I wasn't that far away from passing. What I really need is to boost the score that I got in 2003 and the score that I got in 2004, because those were only about 3 points different from each other. I need to boost that by 10%. That's what I got to do. That's how I wasn't even that far from passing. You know, I need to boost my score by 8%, literally 8 percentage points. And that is what I'm trying to keep in mind. That's what I'm trying to deal with. Today I'm meeting with someone on my essays and my PTs, in particular my PT, because I'm not happy with how this PT came out. I don't believe that I really got where I needed to be on it, even though I felt good about it at the time. I have found that the essays that I felt really good about, I only ended up getting maybe 5 points on. And it's a reality buster, and it is, or not, you know what I mean. Part of my issue right now and part of what is hurting me is, especially on the essays, I am finding it hard to articulate the law. And I think that comes from a difference between active and passive recall. Passive recall, you read something and you think, oh yeah, I recognize that, and you can tell what the difference is. Well, that's what you use on the multiple choice. On the essays, you have to be much more active, and you have to volunteer that information and to make it real and to make it stick. And that's where I'm encountering problems. Now, one of the things I did this morning is part of doing the laptop testing, you have to turn in a mock exam, which is not really an exam. There's no questions. It's just a matter of typing. So you can get used to actually using the software and prove that you have tried to use the software before you walk into the bar exam. as I was doing that, I actually had this idea to pull out a card. So I pulled out a card about intentional torts, and I just wrote everything that I know about intentional torts. Not everything I know, but I wrote down the 7 intentional torts and the doctrine of transferred intent. So I'm thinking that that might actually be a really good way for me to do some recall and memorization in that way, is the typing. Because my MBE testing during this week, has been in the 70 and 80% range, which is extraordinary. That's wonderful. So maybe I can lay off of the MBE just a little bit. I mean, still do the practice questions and still make sure that that recall is there, and then I'm able to demonstrate that I can distinguish the nuances of these different elements and these different laws and the different ways that they could be applied to situations, but also focus more on the skill set that I need to really practice for the essays. The essays, and I know I've said this 100 times before, I'm really good at the application. I'm really, really good at that. That's where the bulk of my time is spent. The problem is that I'm seeing that I don't always recognize the correct issues, and that bothers me. That worries me quite a bit, because on one particular contracts essay, I went totally down this issue about modification when it was really about excuse of performance. The modification could have been useful, and I thought I did a brilliant analysis of it, but it would have gotten me 0 points. And I missed out, I think, on 8 points by not going down the excuse of performance issue. And then, so I misidentified that issue, and I spent a lot of time there, and I went overtime on that. So I think part of what I'm going to be doing this afternoon is giving myself a mock exam for the essays. But that's after I do a little bit of testing recall. So I'll focus on, say, 3 different subjects. I'm doing contracts, torts, and corporations so far, and Civ Pro, and just do that exercise of typing out the rule so that I get used to making a very succinct rule statement to be applied on the essays. And so I think that's how some of this practice is going to go. It's not just about flashing the cards and being able to speak it. Because if the bar exam were about speaking it, then I would have passed. It is about being able to write it and write it well, so that it makes it really easy for the graders to just mark that point off for me and give me that point. So where I'm having the biggest difficulties is getting all the statements of rule in. I do great analysis, but I spend way too much time on that and not enough time on the rules. So I think I'm changing my tactic just a little bit for the memorization, and it's going to be all about typing the rules. Because especially every subject is fair game for the essays. So I gotta continue doing that. I don't have as much difficulty with recall on the MBE. It's just a matter of reading the complete facts and understanding why A is a better answer than B. And I'm starting to notice the pattern of the questions themselves. So I'm starting to notice when it's, choose the lesser of these 4 evils, or tell us what is not going to be a good defense. Those are the hardest questions for me, the double negative sort of questions, because they do feel like a double negative. And so I have to kind of like, okay, well, which of these are good defenses? And that's how I will eliminate it. And then I'm left with the one that is a bad defense. I also need to get a little bit more cognizant of when I'm choosing to guess. I'm getting about 50% right when I guess them. But when I choose to guess, how I mark that and how I choose to go back to it, because I noticed when I was going back through some of the torts questions last night that a few of them I did have legitimate questions on. I did not go back, even though I did have time. I had 8 minutes left and I could have gone back, but I was just so fried by that point that I didn't. And I probably could have gotten at least 3 or 4 more points out of that. So I'm trying to breathe. I'm trying to be positive. I'm trying to not be negative. That was a double negative, I guess. I'm trying not to give in to this idea that I'm not prepared, because I'm far more prepared than I ever was. And this part of the strategy next week will be, once I have all the attack plans made for each of the subjects, which is just, it's a 1-pager, or in some cases 2 pages, that go over just the main points of law, then the memorization part will be recreating them on paper and just writing it out. And if there's a mnemonic, writing out the mnemonic. If there's a for example, with corporations, I made it into something humorous because I always shut down when it comes to commercial or corporate sort of things. So I made it into making corporate babies. How babies are made. So that's organization and formation. And that goes through all the issues of, who you need in order to be able to form a corporation. What happens if the baby makes mistakes before it's born. So that's all the pre-incorporation and promoter stuff. See, I'm remembering it. That's something. And so I'm trying to attach a personality sort of to each of these subjects, because I think that's the only way I'm going to be able to recall it, since I pay attention to personality. So I am on my way to go meet with my professors, and I got to pack up. So thanks for the support. I am freaking out every single day, and I am doing my absolute best to stay calm and stay confident, but it is challenging. So there you have it. If you're going through this process, you know what I feel like, and I'm really looking forward to being myself again in about 3 weeks. So take care.